Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us during the Lytham Partners Summer 2021 Investor Conference. As a reminder, the companies will be available for one-on-one virtual meetings. If you've not already signed up, please send me an email at breza@lythampartners.com or visit www.lythampartners.com/virtual and click on the one-on-one meeting request button. My name is Robert Breza. I'll be the host. I'm the Vice President at Lytham Partners. My background includes 20 years as a Wall Street analyst, 10 years of which were at the Royal Bank of Canada, where I was an II-ranked analyst. Lytham Partners is one of the country's leading investment relations firms with more than 2 decades of corporate access. Our expertise is really connecting small cap companies with high quality focused institutional investors. With that said, let me now turn to the panelists and have each company take 1 or 2 minutes to give us a quick background on the company. I'll start with you, Martin. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Marty Sumichrast. I'm the chairman and co-CEO of cbdMD. We're a New York Stock Exchange listed company. We sell a full suite of CBD branded products across ingestibles, topicals. We also launched a pet line called Paw CBD. We have about 45 different SKUs there. We sell about 70% of our business direct to consumer, the other 30% brick and mortar. Got about 170 employees and are currently running at about a $55 million run rate.
Great. Deanie, do you want to go next, please?
Absolutely. My name is Deanie Elsner. I'm the CEO of Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web pioneered the industry that we participate in today. 7 Stanley brothers intersected with Charlotte Figge, who had Dravet syndrome, a form of epilepsy. That's started the industry that we know today. Today, Charlotte's Web is one of the leading manufacturers of hemp, full spectrum hemp extracts in the world. We are producing just over $100 million of revenue a year. A big part of our focus is our fully integrated supply chain system. We have our own cultivars, and so everything in the Charlotte's Web bottle is exactly what we know to be true. We're not buying anything on the outside market that we're not seeing beforehand from a biomass standpoint. Last year, we established some big infrastructure moves. We established our CW Labs group on the University of Buffalo, and we built a brand new infrastructure. So today we've got the capacity to produce a significant amount of revenue and have been active with the FDA in the legislative process to open the market up and to see finally access enabled for the globe to CBD and CBD extracts.
Great. Maybe I'll turn it over to Aras at Avicanna.
Yep. Thanks. Aras Azadian, CEO, co-founder of Avicanna Inc. We're a Canadian biopharmaceutical company focused on cannabinoid-based products. We take an evidence and science-backed approach. The company started in 2015 to early 2016, and over the past 6 years, we've been able to establish a scientific platform that has put out about 30 finished products into various markets, including Canada, United States, South America, and we're on our way in the European Union as well. These products cover dermatology, skincare, up to pharmaceutical indication-specific drugs. And our approach has been always, again, evidence-based. The collaborations and the research has been done part of a Johnson & Johnson incubator called J-Labs with the University of Toronto's Faculty of Pharmacy, with the University Health Network. So we've been working with the major academic and clinical institutions in Canada to put out these products. Today, our major commercial activities in Canada, we're working with the largest pharmacy chain called Shoppers Drug Mart, where we have a number of our medical prescription products online. We have our skincare line online as well. We are also vertically integrated, but we've built our value chain and a vertical integration from a supply chain perspective in Colombia, where we're cultivating USDA organic and sustainable cultivars for extraction, purification if necessary, and then we use that for the formulations that we have developed here in Canada for the global marketplace.
Fantastic. Maybe next I'll swing it over to CV Science, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, Robert, thank you for having me on the panel with really so thought leaders in our industry over here. I'm also excited to meet some of the new faces which I haven't met before. So my name is Joerg Grasser. I'm the CFO of CV Sciences. CV Sciences is one of the first US CBD companies. We are focusing on quality and science to ensure our consumers receive a highly effective and safe product. We are the first CBD company to achieve self-affirmed GRAS. Our flagship brand, Plus CBD, is one of the top-selling products in the natural product industry, and we have a very solid pipeline of new exciting products which are going to be developed with the customer experience in mind.
Iris, I'd love to get your background as well and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Robert. My name is Iris Bincovich. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Innocon Pharma. InnoCan is listed under OTC QB in the States, in Canada under the CSE, and in Frankfurt as well. Innocon Pharma is a pharmaceutical tech company that focuses on the development of several drug delivery platforms, combining cannabinoids with other pharmaceutical ingredients, as well as we are developing CBD integrated products for topicals as well. We are located in Israel. We work in 3 different distinguished operations. I think we are the only company who is developing CBD via liposomes loading for injectable platform. We have a CBD loaded exosome for specific delivery system. We work together with the Hebrew University in Jerusalem and Professor Chezi Bernholz, head of the Laboratory of Membranes and Liposomes on the liposome project. And we work with the Tel Aviv University and Professor Dani Ofen regarding our joint exosome project.
Fantastic. Maybe I'll start with the big elephant in the room, which is obviously a lot on investors' minds with the FDA. And maybe, Deanie, if you could just touch on the background of maybe what you're seeing or hearing from the FDA, and maybe touch on some signs that maybe investors would see when they finally do turn on the button, I guess.
Yeah.
And stop being the stick in the mud that we see today.
Yeah. So today, the CBD market today is, depending on the data source you pull from, a $2 to $4 billion industry in the U.S. And the FDA, or the Farm Bill Act of December 2018, legalized CBD as we know it today, and that was great. Farmers began to cultivate, and we thought we had access, but it left 3 really big things undone. It stranded farmers because they were able to cultivate, but they couldn't distribute or transport their cultivation once they got it grown. It put consumers at risk because there was no regulatory that surrounded this category. So consumers have to be the one to do the work to understand what's in the bottle. And often a lot of our competitive set doesn't have in the bottle what they say is in the bottle. And then it put manufacturers at risk because it didn't establish federal preemption. So state by state rules are being established, and there's no federal playing field for everybody to participate on. There are really 2 big ways to get regulatory established in this category. The FDA can go through the process that they've established, and that's the listening process, data collection process, and ultimately set the regulatory environment that they've promised to set. Or legislatively, we can get it established through a federal act or a bill coming to law. There are 2 bills, one in the House and one in the Senate, moving forward. There's a lot of similarities between those bills, and so we're confident we're going to see something legislatively happening. But on the FDA standpoint, the FDA's biggest concern in this category is full spectrum hemp extract, is it different from the article or the drug they approved, which was a CBD isolate? And so we've spent the last 15 months meeting with frequency with the FDA, probably 8 to 10 different times, sharing our data with them because we're vertically integrated. So we've got data from seeds, from cultivation, from extraction, production, manufacturing, and ultimately distribution to the consumer. And so that's been in large part what we're putting on the table. The FDA's landing a regulatory environment is the largest catalyst we will see in this category, period. Just for perspective, food, drug, and mass for us today represents about 5% of our business. Brightfield suggests that once FDA establishes a regulatory environment that enables full spectrum hemp extracts to be distributed, that the food, drug, and mass channels will represent about 66% of what is expected to be a $10 to $15 billion industry. So there's nothing more important than the FDA getting a regulatory environment set. And I think between the legislative process and the process the FDA has been going through for the last 2.5 years, we will see a regulatory environment opening up in the U.S.
Great. Thanks for the background and the information. Martin, I would love to get your perspective as well as from other panelists. When we do get the FDA to approve it, how do you think that's going to shift in the competitive landscape? And what do you think is going to be critical to ensuring that we keep the big CPG companies out in the short term, or maybe they just end up acquiring each or all of you? So maybe Martin, if you could start us off, and then I'll turn it over to Avicanna and then CV Science, if you could help, and Aras getting the international benefit that you see would be great as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Martin. Thanks.
Thanks, Robert. I mean, I always have this debate with my partner, Scott Kaufman here. Scott says, let the FDA wait, let them wait. Let's stay in this gray area so the big guys don't come in, and allows us to grab more market share, build the brand, et cetera, et cetera. The flip side of that coin is what Deanie's talking about is you have this huge potential market, the big retailers getting involved with, and they're simply not getting involved because of the gray area we live in. And so, I think we're getting to a point, at least our folks are telling us that we're getting to a point where legislatively it's going to happen. When it's going to happen, I don't know. We hope it's going to happen this year, but hopefully in the next 12 months, they're going to get some legislative process here in the U.S. that's going to allow some clarity. I think some of the things Deanie said is absolutely right. Look, we got in the business in 2018 when we bought the brand cbdMD, and we focused on building the brand. Like, we didn't get too caught up in trying to vertically integrate. We felt that, building the brand for us, driving sales for us, driving brand recognition, that was really key. And so we went from really unknown to really, besides, obviously CB Sciences was before us, but Charlotte's Web has been the leader in this space. They've been around for a long time. And we kind of moved up into that second place category as far as sales and brand recognition. And so, we focused on that. I think the future here, though, is once the legislation comes through and it opens it, then I think these big retailers are going to step in, and I think they're going to choose the brands, right? They're not going to do what they did, I think, a couple years ago when they kind of put their toe in the water and they picked a lot of off brands because they could get 85% off and get great terms and all the other stuff that they generally did. So, and then when things didn't work out for them, they tried to send them back and there was nobody on the other end, right? A lot of these smaller players weren't around. And a lot of these smaller players are going out every day. I think you have 3 companies on this panel, at least, I don't know about the 2 biotech companies, but, that are going to be survivors in this space, right? But there's probably another 2,000 that will not. And that's kind of the natural progression of what happens. I mean, Scott and I have seen this in other industries. We've been involved in other industries. And so you're going to see, the regulation kind of loosen up. You're going to see the mass market take over, and then they're going to pull the brands out. I think the next thing beyond that, and I'm kind of interested in listening to these 2 other folks on here, is the whole issue as far as, how do you go and do therapeutics? How do you go and do things that you can ultimately make claims with, right? Because you can't make claims on the products right now, right? So you've got to do studies. I know we're doing a lot of studies. I know Charlotte Webb's doing studies, CV's had studies to go out there and develop something to go out and talk to everybody about. And I think that's going to be the next thing that really kind of separates the brand. So as we look into next year, I think we see that coming. Gosh, we still think the direct-to-consumer business is a great scalable business, but ultimately that's good. And then as you start to become that company that's known for, having all the science behind it, then I think you get to another level, and you're going to end up with a handful of companies at the end of the day. And it's going to be, this handful of companies are going to kind of own it. Beyond that, the CPG companies come in and, hey, what happens after that? They generally don't create anything, and they like to buy things. So we'll see where it goes from there.
Sure. Maybe Iris, would love to get your perspective on the international side as well. And you specifically, Martin, talked about the therapeutic side, and I think some of the studies you've done already.
Yes. So as Martin said, we try to validate what we claim to. If it's our topicals, pain relief product, that we do clinical tests to see how it stands out regarding efficacy. We even test our cosmetic line for hydration, for wrinkle reduction. I think the science behind the formulation would stand out. The result would stand out. We see that we are a young company and we have 3 different segments, but we see sales coming from European countries with a limited marketing budget because of the efficacy. So I think currently the situation is less digital, more testimonials, more mouth-to-mouth recommendations. Until everything will open, everybody's aware of the limitations with Google and Facebook. It's more all traditional marketing ways to stand up for your brand, to justify. The product is still much more expensive than just topicals without those important ingredients. So bringing a different brand awareness backed by science and efficacy, this is the what is happening currently from our perspective.
Great. Maybe Aras, would you like to comment as well?
Absolutely. I mean, for us, we operate in a global landscape, and it's quite interesting to consider the FDA's position on this. The American folks here, I think I've covered the status of it, but I would just to give you sort of the external perspective. The U.S. obviously has limited the amount of research that can be conducted in many different levels, and on one hand, that gives a Canadian company a substantial advantage, as we've been able to conduct some of those preclinical and clinical and even human studies. Similar to Iris and that group, we have conducted that level of work. But on the other hand, the major institutions, the major investors, the CPG companies, they're waiting for the US and the FDA to have further clarity, right? So while there is these limitations that have been put in place, the world is still looking at the FDA to take a position here, and we have a lot of those discussions at an international level. There is we have cosmetic products that are registered in South America. There's some cosmetic legislation that permits that. In Canada, we sell CBD products as cannabis or medical cannabis. So a pure CBD formulation that would be very, very affordable in the United States is very expensive in Canada because it's going through the conventional cannabis legislation. So you're seeing a lot of different platforms and a lot of different legislation across different markets. And I think a lot of that is coming from the lack of clarity from the FDA with respect to CBD as a potential, specifically as an oral supplement or an oral formulation. So we're obviously eagerly waiting to see our U.S. colleagues here and the work they're doing with the FDA, because I think that will set the precedent and that will set the stage as how the rest of the world will really behave related to CBD.
Great. Joerg, would you like to answer, I guess, or add your comments as well?
Yeah, no, I agree essentially what has been said by the panelists over here. Maybe so one additional thing is what we are talking as a management over here. Independent of FDA clarity, we need to manage our business right now, and we need to make sure we are providing the best and safest product for our consumers. And then when there is some clear FDA guidance, then there will be some great tailwinds coming our way.
Great. Maybe my next question, I'll start with Iris. As you think about the marketing channels and the products, and I know, Martin, you talked about the pet line coming online. Would love to just get your perspective, maybe starting with you, Iris, again. When you look at the products and you look at the marketing channels, and I know Deanie rely heavily on the medical channel as well. Would love to get your perspective on where you're seeing or where you're making investments now, today, and maybe how that might shift with the FDA approval as you think about different marketing channels and different products.
So as a global entity, we try to work with the local distributors in Europe. And a part of the agreement or the distribution deal is that they know how to best to promote in each territory. It's language-wise, it's celebrity-wise, it's local efforts. So everything is divided by territory. In general, InnoCan invest most of its money in research and development of our new platforms, and the new platforms consist delivery of the cannabinoids for pharma indications. We believe that the cannabinoid had excellent therapeutic efficacy. However, current delivery systems have slightly bioavailability limitations. So most of InnoCan cost or development or efforts in the R&D of developing a new delivery platform with the university. So this is what
Great.
my side.
Maybe Martin, if you could touch on the product line, being a dog lover here with 5 dogs. So would love to hear your perspective on the new products. And you mentioned a fairly high number of products in the pet line. So would love to get your perspective on new products and how CBD is expanding, I think maybe in new and innovative ways as well.
I mean, we looked at the pet line in 2019. We kind of soft launched it. We had a veterinarian come in. He's always a friend of mine. He was actually an investor friend of mine. And just a funny story. I said, do you think this is going to work? And he said, Marty, he just sold his veterinarian practice. And he said, the last couple I had to come in was a 65-year-old couple, man and women. And they were having their 12-year-old German Shepherd's teeth cleaned, cost him $800. The husband was missing 2 teeth and the wife was missing 1 teeth. So people will spend money on their pets. As a pet lover, you know. So the market is there. We ran a quick study on our customers, and we found out that over 80% of our customers own pets, right? So it seemed like it was a natural product brand we can go into. So we launched Paw CBD. We really started getting tremendous traction at the beginning of 2020, and now I think it's one of the largest CBD pet brands in the country. I think Brightfield ranked it in the top 5, and we continue to see incredible growth. It's a lot less crowded field than the sort of the mainstream the CBD lines for humans, but the pet line is big. It's continuing to grow. The valuations out there, as you see, there's a lot of pet companies that are going public right now. Are very good. So we think it's a great market. Beyond that, new products. I mean, we think there's a lot of new products out there that are available for us to expand CBD, and you'll see that coming over the next quarter or 2.
And I guess just to chip in, there is about half as many pets in the United States as there are people. So it is a huge population. We expanded our pet line and led the industry in 2019, summer of 2019. That has become a substantial part of our business. And I think what's interesting about the pet line is there is room across species to take CBD and full spectrum hemp extracts. Similar to CGMP and GRAS studies, the pet industry requires certifications. And so Charlotte's Web is one of the only certified NASC pet offers in the industry. And our products are highly regarded. Today, we offer a joint product for dogs as well as a calming product. It's interesting, dogs, the biggest sales week for that dog line for calming is the week before 4th of July. And it makes sense because there's a lot of anxious dogs going into fireworks. I think as we're coming out of this pandemic, we're going to see pets who were brought into homes homes and sat with their owners for weeks and weeks and weeks, now get a little anxious as owners go away. And so when you look at this industry, we get quite excited about the pet side, we get quite excited about the human side, and the proliferation of where CBD and full spectrum hemp extracts can go. And I think our biggest challenge is getting access for consumers to those products.
Great. Aras, would you like to comment at all, and then maybe follow up with CD Science as well?
Sure.
Where you see new markets, new opportunities. It doesn't have to be just pets.
No, absolutely, and I mean it ranges, right? I mean, I think it goes back to the basic mechanisms of action of CBD, and the potential role it has across a different number of clinical indications, but also functional benefits. So I won't dig too deep into the science, but I can say we already are seeing great signals in preclinical and clinical work on dermatology, on pets, on serious clinical indications. And I think it's just a matter of understanding the legislations in the countries that you're operating in again. So I think cosmetics seems to be the early route in South America and Europe, in Canada, and even in the United States. So we are seeing a lot more topical products, and I think we're seeing the benefits of CBD from more of an anti-inflammatory pain perspective, but we're also seeing it in dermatology, eczema, even acne. So we're seeing those kind of benefits. I think the real value from a CBD perspective is only just starting, and I think you're going to see the other rare cannabinoids that are also non-psychoactive, such as CBG and CBC, and their potential benefits. And as more and more markets open up and the consumer preferences demonstrate that there is real need across, again, as cosmetics, even oral care, mouthwash, to again, pharmaceutical medical indications, but again, pets. So I think we're in the earlier stages. I like what Martin said earlier. We have these internal debates as well. On one side, we want the U.S. and the FDA to open things up, and on the other side, we almost want the time to build our own brands and our own intellectual property more. So when they come in, we've built, great foundations for them to either acquire or invest into. So there's definitely two sides to that argument as well.
Joerg, would you like to comment as well?
Yeah, so from a CPG perspective, it's essentially you need to have the right product for the right consumer, and it needs to be at the right price point as well. So there are different sales channels, and so from our perspective, we have really developed a specific channel-specific branding strategy where we have very specific brands targeting certain sales channels, which is definitely, it needs to have the consumer in mind. What does the consumer want? And then building the portfolio around it.
Great. Well, maybe I'll just ask a quick kind of wide open question. As you think about, the industry in general with, I'll compare and contrast the THC market here. We see, we've seen it go through boom and bust with, I'll pick on Oregon. When Oregon first went rec, cultivation was king, right? And they let anybody and everybody grow, and we saw this massive price increase go from, let's say on average, $1,200 a pound to $2,800 a pound. Then when it cratered, it went down to $600 to $800 a pound. When you think about the CBD market and cultivation, et cetera, I kind of think about who's going to become the low-cost producer and where does price play into that. So how do we think about, low-cost, let's say, manufacturing or supply chain versus brand recognition and premium pricing? Maybe I'll turn it over to you, Deanie.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating question, because the big question in both of these industries, CBD and THC, is does it become a commodity or does it stand alone as brands? Charlotte's Web believes it stands alone as brands. I think there's a potential commoditization, but my sense from the FDA is that they truly believe that each of these cultivars, each of these seeds is a very specific fingerprint, and their focus is is the thing you're selling the thing that you researched? And so from that standpoint, they want to see safeguards, they want to see safety, they want to see protocols to ensure that the product is consistent bottle to bottle, year to year. I think that gets you to some form of vertically integrated supply chain. Now, do we need everything that we needed years ago in the United States? No, we were just opening a market, and we've built an infrastructure to enable that. But I do think that at the end of the day, they want to see that the product that you are producing, you can produce year after year in a consistent way. And I think that's what the vertically integrated supply chain gets you. The cost is not in the farming. The cost is in the manufacturing, the extraction, and the production of your products. And I think that's where a lot of players have come into the market and have offered alternate services. I think the challenge with those services is the dollars get trapped with the middleman. And I do think price becomes a challenge. We've seen pricing compression happen in the marketplace over the last 2 years. Charlotte's Web took a 15 to 20% price reduction that we funded through our vertically integrated supply chain and from a reallocation of our trade promotions. And so I think that you've got to have optionality as a company to shift with the external environment. I think the FDA is going to want to know that you have complete control over the cultivars that you're putting into your product, and you can do so consistently over time. And for sure, from a research standpoint, you have to ensure that what you're researching is in fact the thing that you continue to sell. And so our associations with Johns Hopkins, Harvard, recently announced CU, and some other institutions were on the cusp of announcing, we're doing research that is on the cultivars that we're producing day in and day out. And I think that is a big difference. Price will play a role in this whole equation because it will become a consumer products goods category. But I think in the end, it's going to come down to science, proof, and your control of the ingredients and the inputs.
Maybe Aras, just to shift north of the border here, as you think about Canada and specifically price, and we all know consumer products such as alcohol are much more expensive in Canada. Would love to get your perspective on how you see that market and price being sensitive for the consumers as well, because you probably live it every day up there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll start off by just giving everyone some perspective. CBD on average is somewhere between a few $100s up to $1,000 a kilogram in the United States. In Canada, it's still anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 a kilogram. And that's because, I'm talking about purified CBD, and it's because the Canadian government is not allowing us to import that. We have our own vertical integration in South America, and we're producing at a substantial discount on the CBD front and THC front, but we're not permitted to import into Canada. That's why legislation, I think, again, is a major factor. But I would agree with the rest of the colleagues around standardization. I think with any type of botanical extract or botanical active pharmaceutical ingredient, standardization of the cultivation, certification of that, whether it's GACP to the extraction, which should be GMP, gives you a raw material or an extract that is then standardized, and your clinical studies and your manufacturing should be then again standardized to be able to provide something consistently. And I think once that's in place and that becomes the international standard, there may be some commodification that happens, but then the data is relevant to your cultivar. So we have our commercial cultivars that we grow, and all the preclinical and the clinical work we do is based on that standardized extract. So it's not just a purified CBD isolate, which can be relatively the same if it meets the chemical sort of qualifications. But I agree that the future of this is going to be related to having those input materials that are standardized, and they are different. You're going to have different ratios of flavonoids, terpenes, cannabinoids. So really interested to see how that goes. And I think once that does standardize globally, then you're going to see borders open up. Because there's no reason why, for example, Canada does not permit me as a Canadian company to leverage off of my South American supply chain to bring these raw materials in, which will allow me to sell medicine to my patients at a substantially lower price. And I'm talking about prescription medicine that patients are today paying $50 to $100 a bottle. They will be paying a fraction of that if I can import it. So I think that standardization will ultimately lead to also borders opening up and for this to be treated as an actual pharmaceutical ingredient.
Great. Would anybody else like to comment, Martin or
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting just to go to his point up in Canada. I remember in 2019, I went up on a road show up to Toronto, and I was talking to a hedge fund manager, and I brought some product samples with me, and he's like, oh my God, can I keep them? And I'm like, sure, you can keep them. Found out you couldn't buy CBD up there, and then pot was legal. I was like, this is crazy. It's the exact opposite in the United States. So it's just very interesting to see. Look, we made a decision early on that we weren't going to vertically integrate. You know, we looked at the price of CBD when we first got going. It was $9,500 a kilo. I mean, really crazy cost. And it came down. I mean, that's down over 90% over that. A lot of the companies that got involved, I'm sure you guys know some of the big names of them, are kind of wiped out. One of them went through bankruptcy. So there's a whole bunch of turmoil. So we sidestepped all that. We found 4 different suppliers that we buy from. We test everything. You know, the lot comes in, we quarantine it, we send it out for testing. If it meets our standards, we release it to our manufacturing. So we've done that. But I think going forward, you know, there's a lot to be said, you know, as I said earlier, about really understanding the science behind, you know, what CBD can do. And you mentioned a couple other you know, the other cannabinoids that we put in our proprietary mix. I think that's a whole nother level that ultimately is going to come down. Whether the consumer gets into that or not, you know, that's a complicated thing to try to, you know, discuss all the different acronyms to the consumer. But ultimately, I think having a product that, you know, I always say, like, you know, McDonald's, right? You go to a McDonald's in Texas, it's the same as the one in Illinois, right? You want to make sure your product is the same. You want to make sure that what you say on your bottle is in it, and that you can gain the consumer trust. And so we've done a lot of work focused on gaining the trust of our consumers. And I think ultimately, you know, that's where it's going to end up, and then go to the science end of it, which opens up a whole nother piece. And I think when you talk about the science end of it and the therapeutics and ultimately in drug discovery, I mean, you're not even in the first inning of cannabinoids, really, of what's out there. It's just, it's an incredible opportunity.
Great. Maybe Iris or Joerg, would you like to comment?
Yes, thank you, Robert. As Martin said, we don't do any vertical integration as well. We focus on our R&D. Just to share, for our delivery platforms, we use the API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, so very clean, isolated molecules, in order to have the same results, the same quality. Issues from injection to injection or exosome-loaded cannabinoids. So having ability to control the raw ingredients is crucial when developing pharmaceutical delivery platforms. So it's a different when you do the oral administration, the topical administration, and pharma administration. So it's a completely different story from InnoCan. I think having a good, reliable source is the basic when you do the research, if it's for the topical or the injectable. As for now, we manage to have reliable sources and supply worldwide of the cannabinoids we are working with. As stated with my colleagues, you know, the marijuana has a few hundred different molecules, and we are just scratching the surface of this potential plant, which have enormous applications. If, as said, it's for pets or children or epilepsy or pain or psoriasis. And I think we are just starting to understand the real potential, the real benefits. And there is a lot more applications that this can be beneficial in.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so from a CFO's perspective, I'm very happy that we as a company made the decision very early on to not being vertically integrated. It is much easier to adjust your supply chain. when you do this via external partners rather than having everything insourced. We established long-standing relationships with our farmers, with our extractors, with oil suppliers, and with contract manufacturers. All of them are getting qualified. All of these suppliers in our supply chain need to be GMP certified to ensure that they provide us with a high-quality product. But definitely, it gives us the flexibility to scale up or to adjust with market demand.
Great. Maybe I'll wrap it up with one last question here. I think as we talked about the FDA, what other impediments do you see? Obviously, when you're talking to cannabis companies specifically, they are hindered by banking regulations. Clearly, you can't transport across borders. I know in Canada, obviously, you can transport across provinces, but what other impediments do you see working against the industry beyond the FDA, I guess? Maybe I'll start with you, Martin.
Well, I think it's kind of a little bit better now, but, there's still a lot of bad actors in our neighborhood, and, sure. It doesn't take much for that to kind of cloud things up. And I think that, that's getting cleared up. That's an unfortunate thing because we're in a new industry. I think the bigger one for us is, the ability to market, right? You're still very confined on what you can do. Now, we were able, because of our relationship with Bellator, who's owned by CBS Viacom, we were able to get our nationally run TV ads going on 14 different cable channels, but we still can't get, on the major channels. So what we had to do is we did a deal with, we've done deals with a couple of large athletic groups. We just cut a deal with CrossFit. So we're going to be all over the CrossFit Games, which is going to be televised on CBS at the end of July. And that's kind of a backdoor way of getting the brand a national recognition. And we've done a lot of those things. So you've got to really learn how to guerrilla market a lot of ways because you're really confined by that. So I think those are the two things that we deal with. And but look, a lot of that's going to start to go away. I think the CBD industry is, if I said that, on the biotech side, it's probably not even the first inning. I think on our side, on the consumer brand side, it's probably in the bottom of the second inning. So we got a lot of room for this thing to grow, and it's going to be an interesting next 18 months.
Great. Deanie, do you see many impediments outside of the marketing that Martin touched on? I mean, I would assume human capital is one issue as well, and maybe just touch on some maybe operational things that you continue to be challenged every day with.
Yeah, and I'll go back to Robert. It comes down to the anchor of a regulatory environment being established, but there are a number of headwinds, not insurmountable, and we're working around them, similar to what Marty's doing. I think a big headwind is the infrastructure, right? So unlike cannabis, we have access to a financial market and an insurance market, and so that's great. It's still quite expensive, and so you manage around that. Less access to science, and it comes down to, if the FDA has approved an isolate as a drug, then advancing science and deep science on a full spectrum hemp extract precludes you from becoming a dietary supplement. So it's getting that figured out. I think there's also the marketing piece that Marty touched on, but I think the other part is education and just getting out and educating this consumer. That all goes back to landing a regulatory environment that opens this up as a dietary supplement. We get the bad actors out of the mix, 3,500 brands today. It will greatly filter those bad actors out of the mix and will open up the avenues where science becomes accessible. Once you have the science and you have the data and you have the proof points, then you can move on to the distribution and the education and really open up the category as it is. CBD in the early stages of development, I agree with Marty on. However, it's way more advanced today than cannabis. And so getting CBD through these next couple of legs of some of this regulatory cleanup so that it sets the stage for how cannabis will follow, I think will become a critical deliverable for the FDA. And that's why we're bullish on the fact that we will see some progress in this category in the near term.
Great. Well, with that, we have basically run out of time. So I want to thank each and every one of you for your time, and definitely enjoyed the perspective and the discussion. So thank you all very much. With that, if anybody does have any questions, or just as a reminder, you can sign up for one-on-one meetings with each of the companies and the panelists specifically. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Robert. Good to see everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.